Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. We're in Davos, where leaders have gathered to discuss how to develop a new world economic model to face the crisis. My guest is Arianna Huffington. She's president and editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post and one of the leading internet newspapers. Last year, she was named to the Time 100, which is Time magazine's list of the world's 100 most influential people. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
You have been here for a few days, Arianna Huffington. What struck you in Davos this week?
Well, the theme of transformation, which is the theme of this year's Davos, has been really present in all the panels. And I think the most significant panels for me and dinners have been the ones with social entrepreneurs, with the global shapers of tomorrow, who are the young under 30 leaders around the world who are coming up with innovative solutions to our social problems. And I really believe that as we're looking at governments cutting down at all the austerity measures around the world, there is a lot of hope coming from what individuals and not-for-profit groups are doing by bringing best practices from businesses to the project of solving social problems everywhere. It's very inspiring.
So you've had many lives. You were born in Greece, you graduated from Cambridge, you moved to the US, you worked for the Republican Newt Gingrich Progress of Freedom Foundation years ago before becoming a liberal icon. You ran for governor of California, and after that you launched the internet newspaper, the Huffington Post, which became a liberal voice with 28 million visitors monthly. So you're a writer, a politician, an entrepreneur. What's your drive, Arianna Huffington? How would you describe yourself?
Well, right now, I feel through the Huffington Post, which was launched in 2005, we can really have an impact on a lot of the conversations happening internationally in terms of how do we bring together people who can innovate, people who care, and who can bring the best practices from business, from entrepreneurs, together to create systemic and sustainable solutions. That's what drives me. That's my passion. And the Huffington Post is both a journalistic enterprise with over 400 full-time journalists and a platform that can give a voice and amplify the voices of millions of people around the world.
You actually sold the Huffington Post to AOL, and now it's expanding abroad, and especially in Europe. So the French HuffPost was launched last Monday in Paris with a partnership with Le Monde and also with Les Éditions Indépendantes, the company of Mathieu Pigasse, CEO of Lazare France. Anne Sinclair is the editorial director. Why did you choose France, and how did you decide to do a partnership with Le Monde?
Well, first of all, as you said, we're expanding internationally. You know, after France, we're going to be in Spain with El País. The launch is in March, then in Italy with the Espresso Group in April, and then we're going to Brazil, and we hope Greece and Germany and multiple other countries. But launching in France first, this is our first foreign language Huffington Post, Le Huffington Post, although we launched in the UK and Canada before. The reason for France that I personally have had a love affair with France ever since I was 11 years old and my father took my sister and me to Paris as our first foreign trip. And I learned French as my first foreign language. It's a little, oh yeah, after all these years, that's why we're not doing the interview in French. But it's held a tremendous fascination for me. I think it's an incredible intellectual and cultural center of the world. And it's been really great launching last Monday and having Anne Sinclair at the helm.
Yeah, how did you meet Anne Sinclair, and how was the choice made for her to become the French HuffPost editorial director?
So when we started thinking of who the editorial director would be, I had already read Anne Sinclair's blog when, during the presidential election in 2008, she started her own blog when she was living in Washington.
That's how you discover
Well, I had
Sinclair?
heard of her, you know, obviously her reputation as a journalist, her television show, I knew of all that. But I had been reading her regularly through her blog, and I realized, you know, how interesting she was and how interested in the digital world. You know, she and I are about the same age. We were actually born the same day, July 15, 2 years apart. So it's normally unusual for people our generation to be as interested in the digital world. So how did you meet her
eventually after?
And then, so I mentioned to Mathieu Pigasse and Louis Dreyfus, the CEO of Le Monde, that I would love to meet her because I thought she would be the perfect editorial director. And Mathieu Pigasse introduced us. And we first talked on the phone, then I flew to Paris and met with her, and I was delighted when she accepted.
Anne Sinclair actually said during the press conference in Paris that the French HuffPost will cover all news, including Dominique Strauss-Kahn's case. Is it something you had discussed with her?
Yes, absolutely. We had discussed it, and very professionally. She was very clear that any news that may come about her husband will be covered by the team, including the editor-in-chief, Paul Ackerman, who came from Figaro.
How do you think actually the HuffPost in France could be as successful as the one in the US? In France, many internet news sites have blossomed. So how the HuffPost will make a difference?
Well, the Huffington Post is a hybrid. It's a combination of a journalistic enterprise with our own reporters and an aggregator that links to the best of the web. This is our promise to our readers, that come here and will bring you the best of the web, not just what we produce, but what we curate. And also, it is a platform for many, many voices. Anne Sinclair at the press conference called it Ouvrez la fenêtre. So we don't just...
Open the window.
Open the window, you know. So we don't just post the same voices, the same people, but we want to have multiple voices, you know, young and old, established and unknown. Is
that the recipe for success?
It is, absolutely. I think right now, if you looked at our first week, they included well-known voices and also little-known voices, like a woman who had her own small blog about her struggle with breast cancer. And suddenly there it was on our homepage. And one of the things that I love the most is being able to give a megaphone to many people who otherwise would not have as big an audience.
So HuffPost contributors are not paid, and some criticize this economic model. Would this change one day, Arianna Huffington?
I think people who criticize the model do not understand the internet, because platforms are there for anyone who wants to use them, whether it's a Facebook platform or the Huffington Post as a platform. If they don't want to use it, they don't blog. Having a job is very different, as you know. You have deadlines, obligations. Those who blog own the rights to their blog, so they can cross-post or use them in a book or whatever they want. And perhaps most important, a lot of the people who appear as bloggers already have their own blog, but it doesn't have the kind of distribution that the Huffington Post platform can provide. What confuses people is that we are at the same time a journalistic enterprise with our own reporters. And so the fact that we're a hybrid sometimes makes it harder for people to understand the distinction.
But for you, there is a distinction. So it's
absolutely.
Not even a question.
No, I mean...
So the U.S. presidential election campaign has started. The Huffington Post stood at the Democrat convention in 2008. Are you going to support one of the candidacies this year?
We don't really endorse candidates. We write about, obviously, everything that's happening politically. We criticize both parties, and what we care about are issues, like the fate of the middle class, like youth unemployment especially, like our presence in Afghanistan. There are certain issues that the Huffington Post has obsessed over and covered relentlessly. And so our positions are based on the issues we care about, that we consider the central issues of our time.
So you don't support one of the candidates, so you don't support Barack Obama or?
Obviously, in 2008, the site was very positive for Barack Obama, but we have also been very critical of him in the way he has governed. So we're not cheerleading for one party or the other. You know, we choose who would be best for the country based on where they stand on our issues, but we don't endorse.
Who do you think would be his best challenger within the Republican Party?
You know, what is interesting is that if Newt Gingrich won the nomination, which is less likely than Mitt Romney winning it, he would be a pretty formidable debater. He's a much more flawed candidate than Mitt Romney, but he has a kind of intellectual bravado that can come across in a debate in interesting ways. It would definitely make it for a more exciting campaign.
Just last question very quickly. Also, there are presidential elections in France. So what's your take on the socialist candidate François Hollande, who's just unveiled his program and said that the financial world was his fault?
Well, there's no question that the financial world has not really been held accountable for the financial crisis. And wanting more accountability is something that the people of the world, not just of France and the United States, want. So a candidate who demands accountability, while at the same time recognizing that the financial world can be a huge contributor to the country's wealth, would have a strong platform.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Arianna Huffington. Thank you for watching France 24. Stay with us.